A group of bullies burnt her dad's uniform. 10 minutes later, the entire SEAL team showed up. She was just the quiet scholarship girl, hiding behind good grades and a lie that her father was still deployed. But everything shattered when they set fire to the last thing she had left of him and filmed her heartbreak for the world to mock. What no one knew was that her dad wasn't just any soldier, he was a hero who saved lives. And the men he saved? They were about to walk through those school doors, 12 uniforms, one mission. Not just to defend her name, but to uncover the truth, take down the powerful, and honor a forgotten legacy. What happens when justice wears a uniform and walks in uninvited? Before we begin, send a quick wave in the comments. Tell me your city, your country, your vibe. It's amazing how stories like this echo across the world. Reese Montgomery adjusted her secondhand blazer as she walked through the gleaming halls of Westbrook Academy. The pristine marble floors and mahogany-paneled walls seemed to mock her worn shoes, carefully polished each morning to hide their age. Around her, students chatted about weekend trips to Europe and new luxury cars, conversations that felt like they were from another world entirely. Her stomach growled softly, reminding her that she'd skipped breakfast again to make the money in her lunch account stretch until Friday. 3 more days. She could manage that. "Oh, look, if it isn't Little Miss Scholarship," came a familiar, sneering voice. Brittany Hawthorne stood by her locker, surrounded by her usual group of followers. Her designer uniform looked freshly pressed, her blonde hair perfectly styled. "Still wearing last year's blazer, Montgomery? I thought military families were supposed to be well off." Reese felt her cheeks burn, but kept her head high. "My dad's deployed overseas," she said, the practiced lie sliding off her tongue with familiar ease. "We're doing just fine, thanks." "Really?" Brittany's perfectly shaped eyebrows arched. "Because I heard your mom works as a cleaning lady at St. Mary's Hospital. That must be so embarrassing for you." The words hit like a physical blow, but 3 years of hiding her truth had taught Reese how to maintain her composure. "There's nothing embarrassing about honest work," she said quietly, though her hands trembled slightly as she opened her locker. "If you say so." Brittany's laugh echoed down the hallway. "Though I suppose someone has to clean up after the important people." Reese focused on her textbooks, letting the familiar weight of advanced chemistry ground her. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Stand tall, little soldier. Never let them see you break." She'd learned that lesson well in the 3 years since his death, a truth known only to her and her mother. The rest of the school day passed in a blur of advanced classes and careful avoidance. Reese threw herself into her studies just as she always did. Her perfect grades weren't just about honoring her father's memory. They were her ticket to staying at Westbrook, where the scholarship covered most, but not all, of the astronomical tuition. When the final bell rang, Reese made her way home to their small apartment in the less desirable part of town. The building's faded exterior and creaky elevator were a far cry from the pristine halls of Westbrook, but it was home. Inside, she found her mother's note on the kitchen counter, written in tired handwriting. "Working double shift again tonight, leftovers in the fridge, don't wait up. Love you, Mom." Reese traced her fingers over the words, picturing her mother's work-worn hands writing them. Patricia Montgomery had taken on cleaning jobs at the hospital during the day and office buildings at night, doing whatever it took to keep Reese in school after they'd lost their military housing and benefits. The truth about her father's death sat heavy in Reese's chest as she heated up the leftover pasta. Captain James Montgomery hadn't simply been deployed, he died a hero in Afghanistan 3 years ago. But admitting that meant facing questions about their changed circumstances, dealing with pitying looks, and worst of all, possibly losing her place at Westbrook if anyone discovered just how dire their financial situation had become. The scholarship committee believed her father was still serving, still providing that military income. The careful deception had started as a way to protect her mother's pride, to give them time to adjust. Now it felt like a web she couldn't escape. Reese sat at their small kitchen table, homework spread out before her, and glanced at the single photo they'd kept displayed, her father in his dress uniform, strong and proud. In it, his eyes held the same determination she saw in her own reflection each morning. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered to the empty apartment. "I know you always taught me to be honest, but I don't know what else to do. Mom works so hard, and she's so tired all the time. I can't let her down." The silence offered no answers. Outside, she could hear the distant sounds of traffic and the occasional siren, so different from the peaceful military base where they'd once lived. Their tiny apartment felt especially empty on nights like these when her mother worked late and the weight of their secret pressed down like a physical thing. Reese pulled out her worn notebook and began her homework, pushing aside thoughts of Brittany's taunts and her mother's exhaustion. She had to maintain her perfect grades, had to keep up appearances, had to protect what little stability they'd managed to build in the aftermath of their loss. The lie about her father's deployment had become a shield, protecting them from pity and judgment, but sometimes she wondered how long they could keep up the pretense. For now, though, she would do what she'd done for the past 3 years: study hard, hold her head high, and guard their secret with everything she had. It was the only way she knew to honor her father's memory and protect her mother's sacrifice. Tomorrow would bring another day of careful deception at Westbrook Academy, another day of navigating between two worlds, another day of being the daughter of a hero no one knew had fallen. The announcement about Westbrook Academy's annual Military Appreciation Assembly crackled over the intercom during third period. Reese's heart skipped a beat as Principal Matthews detailed the upcoming event. This year's assembly will feature a special display of military uniforms and artifacts from our Westbrook families. The principal's voice echoed through the classroom. Students with military connections who wish to participate should see Mrs. Anderson in the main office. Reese's hand trembled as she wrote down the details in her planner. In her mind's eye, she saw her father's pristine Navy SEAL dress uniform hanging in its garment bag at the back of her mother's closet. They had kept it perfectly preserved, along with his medals and citations, touching them only on special occasions when the weight of his absence became too heavy to bear alone. That evening, she found her mother at their kitchen table, still in her hospital cleaning uniform, sorting through bills with tired eyes. "Mom," Reese said softly, settling into the chair across from her. "The school is doing their Military Appreciation Assembly next week." Patricia Montgomery looked up, worry lines creasing her forehead. "Oh, sweetheart, is this about your father's uniform?" Reese nodded, her throat tight. "I want to present it. I want to tell the truth about Dad." Her mother's hands stilled on the papers. "Are you sure? Once we tell people..." She didn't finish the sentence, but Reese understood. Once they revealed that Captain James Montgomery had died 3 years ago, there would be no going back. "I'm tired of pretending," Reese whispered, tears threatening to spill. "Dad was a hero. He saved his entire squad. He deserved the Medal of Honor. Why are we hiding that?" Patricia reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "We started hiding it because we were hurting, because the military somehow lost our paperwork, and we lost our housing, and everything was falling apart. It wasn't right, but at the time, it felt like the only way to protect you." "But now," Reese pressed, "Mom, every time I say he's just deployed, it feels like I'm betraying him, like I'm ashamed." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, baby, your father would never want you to feel that way." Reese stood and went to her mother's bedroom. With reverent hands, she unzipped the garment bag at the back of the closet. The dark blue uniform emerged, its gold buttons gleaming even in the dim light. She ran her fingers over the ribbons and medals that told the story of her father's service. "This is all we have left of him," she said, as her mother appeared in the doorway. "But it's not just a uniform. It's everything he stood for, everything he taught me about honor and courage." Patricia crossed the room and wrapped her arms around her daughter. "Your father would be so proud of you. But sweetie, If we tell the truth now, there might be consequences. Questions about our situation, about the scholarship. I know, Reese acknowledged, but Dad always said that doing the right thing isn't always easy. He taught me that before. Her voice caught. Before Afghanistan. They stood together, holding the uniform between them. Reese breathed in the faint scent of cedar from the garment bag, remembering how her father had looked the last time he wore it. Tall and strong, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. The assembly is next week, Reese said quietly. I want to stand up there and tell everyone who he really was. How he died, making sure every single member of his squad made it home. They gave him the Medal of Honor, Mom. He deserves to be remembered. Patricia wiped tears from her cheeks. You're right. You're so right. I've been so focused on surviving, on keeping us afloat, that I forgot what your father always said about living with honor. So I can do it? Reese asked, hope rising in her chest. Her mother nodded slowly. Yes. But Reese, you need to be prepared. Once people know the truth, things will change. There will be questions we'll have to answer. I know, Reese said, carefully returning the uniform to its garment bag. But maybe it's time for things to change. Dad wouldn't want us to keep hiding who we are. The next morning, Reese walked into the main office with her head held high. Mrs. Anderson looked up from her desk with a warm smile. I'd like to participate in the Military Appreciation Assembly, Reese said clearly. I want to present my father's Navy SEAL dress uniform. As Mrs. Anderson noted her name, Reese felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For 3 years, she had carried the burden of their secret, measuring every word, avoiding questions about her father. Now, finally, she would honor him properly. The uniform hung in her bedroom that night, a silent guardian watching over her as she worked on what she would say at the assembly. How could she capture in words the man who had taught her to be strong, to stand up for what was right, to face her fears? How could she explain what it meant to be the daughter of a hero? Her father's voice seemed to whisper in her memory. Stand tall, little soldier. Tell your truth. And finally, after 3 long years, she would. The Westbrook Academy auditorium buzzed with excitement as students and families filed in for the Military Appreciation Assembly. Reese sat backstage, her father's carefully pressed uniform draped across her lap. Her fingers traced the gold buttons, drawing strength from their familiar texture. Principal Matthews stepped up to the podium, his voice echoing through the packed auditorium. Today, we honor the brave men and women who serve our country and the families who support them. Reese peeked through the curtain, scanning the crowd. Her mother sat in the 3rd row, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Near the front, Brittany Hawthorne held court with her usual group of followers, their designer clothes and perfect hair making them stand out even in the dim lighting. One by one, students presented their military tributes, a grandfather's World War II medals, a sister's active duty photos, a brother's Marine Corps sword. Then, finally, Principal Matthews called her name. Next, we have Reese Montgomery, presenting her father's Navy SEAL dress uniform. Reese stood lifting the uniform with careful hands. The stage lights felt warm on her face as she approached the podium. She hung the uniform on the display stand, adjusting it until it stood perfectly straight, just as her father would have wanted. This uniform belonged to my father, Captain James Montgomery, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. For the past 3 years, I've told people he was deployed overseas. But that wasn't true. A hushed silence fell over the auditorium. In the front row, Brittany leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against her armrest. My father died in Afghanistan 3 years ago, Reese continued, her voice growing stronger. He gave his life saving every member of his squad during an ambush. He was awarded the Medal of Honor for his sacrifice. She touched the ribbons on the uniform's chest, each one telling a story of service and courage. This uniform represents everything my father stood for: honor, duty, and sacrifice. He taught me that doing the right thing isn't always easy. but it's always worth it. Tears glinted in many eyes throughout the audience. Her mother pressed a hand to her heart, nodding encouragement. Even Principal Matthews dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief. "Today, I'm finally honoring my father the way he deserves," Reese said. "Not as someone away on deployment, but as the hero he truly was. Thank you." Applause thundered through the auditorium as Reese stepped back. Several military veterans in attendance stood, offering a solemn salute to Captain Montgomery's uniform. The gesture brought fresh tears to Reese's eyes. But amid the standing ovation, Brittany Hawthorne remained seated, her green eyes narrow and calculating. She whispered something to Madison Chen beside her, both girls staring at Reese with newfound interest. After the assembly, as Reese carefully packed away her father's uniform, she overheard Brittany's voice from the hallway outside the auditorium. "Did you know Montgomery was the scholarship charity case?" Brittany's words dripped with disdain. All this time, she's been pretending her dad was just away. What else has she been lying about? "But her dad was a real hero," Madison's voice answered. "The Medal of Honor is like the highest award they give." "Please?" Brittany scoffed. "If he was such a hero, why are they so poor they need charity to attend Westbrook? Something doesn't add up, and I'm going to find out exactly what she's hiding." Reese's hands trembled as she zipped the garment bag. The pride and peace she'd felt during her presentation began to crack. She knew that tone in Brittany's voice. It was the same one she used right before destroying someone's reputation. "Did you see her mom?" Brittany continued, her voice fading down the hall. "In those cheap clothes?" Now we know why Montgomery wears the same 3 outfits all the time. This is going to be interesting. Reese hugged the garment bag to her chest, trying to hold on to the feeling of honor and truth she'd experienced on stage. But Brittany's words echoed in her mind, threatening to taint this moment she'd waited 3 years to experience. Her mother appeared in the doorway, pride shining in her tired eyes. "You did beautifully, sweetheart. Your father would have been so proud." Reese managed a smile, not wanting to worry her mother with Brittany's threats. But as they walked to the bus stop, they couldn't afford parking fees. She caught sight of Brittany watching from her father's luxury car, that calculating look still in her eyes. The truth about her father was finally out, just as Reese had wanted. But somehow, in Brittany's hands, even this moment of honor felt like it could become a weapon. Reese lifted her chin, clutching her father's uniform closer. Whatever Brittany was planning, she would face it with the same courage her father had taught her. She had nothing to be ashamed of. Not her father's sacrifice, not their poverty, not the truth. Brittany Hawthorne perched on the edge of her desk in the empty classroom, surrounded by her inner circle. Madison Chen, Sophie Parker, and Taylor Williams leaned in close as Brittany outlined her plan, their designer bags scattered at their feet. "That uniform is everything to her," Brittany said, twirling a strand of perfectly highlighted hair. "Did you see how she touched it? Like it was made of gold or something." Madison shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know, Britt. Her dad died serving our country." Brittany's green eyes flashed. "Are you serious? She lied to everyone for 3 years. Besides, if her family was really so special, they wouldn't need charity to attend Westbrook. My father pays full tuition to keep this school exclusive." "What exactly are you planning?" Sophie asked, adjusting her pearl necklace. "Simple," Brittany smiled. "Montgomery has volleyball practice after school. The uniform is in the display case outside Principal Matthews' office. The cleaning staff always takes their break at 4:30. We'll have 15 minutes. Taylor pulled out her rose gold iPhone. "My dad's on the school board. I know the security code for the case." "Perfect." Brittany stood, smoothing her pleated skirt. "Once we have it, we'll take it to the creek behind the football field. Let's see how proud she is of Daddy's uniform after that." The girls exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and uncertainty on their faces. Their world of luxury cars and summer homes hadn't prepared them to understand the value of a fallen soldier's uniform. "What if we get caught?" Madison whispered, Brittany rolled her eyes. Please. My father donated the new science wing. Nothing's going to happen to us. Besides, she deserves it for lying to everyone. Across campus, Reese changed into her volleyball practice clothes, carefully hanging her school uniform in her locker. Her teammates chatted about the assembly, several offering kind words about her father. "Your dad was a real hero," Sarah Martinez said, lacing up her shoes. "That must have been hard, keeping it secret so long." Reese managed a small smile. "Thanks. It feels good to finally tell the truth." As practice began, Brittany and her friends gathered near Principal Matthews' office. They watched the elderly janitor shuffle away for his break, right on schedule. "Okay, Taylor," Brittany whispered. "Do it." Taylor's manicured fingers punched in the security code. The display case clicked open. Inside, Captain Montgomery's uniform hung proudly, medals gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Hurry!" Sophie urged, keeping watch. Brittany grabbed the uniform, stuffing it into her oversized Gucci bag without ceremony. The medals clinked against her designer wallet and car keys. "Got it," she smirked. "Let's go." The girls hurried through the empty halls, their expensive shoes clicking on the polished floor. They slipped out the side door, heading toward the creek that ran behind the football field. "This is where the scholarship kids eat lunch," Brittany sneered, looking around the secluded area. Fitting, isn't it? In the gymnasium, Reese dove for a volleyball, her muscles burning with effort. She thought about her father, how he'd taught her to push through exhaustion during their morning runs. The memory gave her strength. Meanwhile, Brittany pulled the uniform from her bag, holding it up with distaste. "Look how old it is. Probably from some discount store." "Those are real medals," Madison pointed out, her voice shaking. "Shouldn't we just put it back?" "Don't chicken out now," Brittany snapped. "She needs to learn her place. You can't just show up at Westbrook with some sob story and expect to fit in." Sophie and Taylor nodded, though doubt flickered across their faces. They'd never questioned their place at the top of Westbrook's social hierarchy, never considered the weight of sacrifice the uniform represented. "My father says people like her are trying to change everything," Brittany continued, dropping the uniform on a fallen log. "Using charity and sympathy to get what they haven't earned. Well, not at our school." The creek gurgled nearby, its muddy banks littered with leaves. The uniform's gold buttons caught the afternoon light, a silent testament to Captain Montgomery's service. "The janitor will be back soon," Taylor warned, checking her phone. Brittany surveyed their hiding spot with satisfaction. "Perfect. By the time anyone finds it, it'll be ruined. Maybe next time she'll think twice before trying to make us feel sorry for her." The girls headed back toward the parking lot, leaving the uniform vulnerable to the elements. Their designer shoes avoided mud puddles, their laughter echoing through the trees. In the gym, practice was ending. Reese gathered her things, unaware that her father's uniform, their most precious possession, was no longer safely displayed outside the principal's office. "Good practice, everyone," Coach Stevens called out. "Remember, game on Friday." Brittany slid into her BMW's leather seat, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. "Trust me," she told her friends. "By tomorrow morning, everyone will forget all about Montgomery's little show. She'll go back to being nobody, just like she's supposed to be." Madison, Sophie, and Taylor climbed into their own luxury vehicles, their consciences quieted by the comfort of their privileged lives. They pulled out of Westbrook Academy's parking lot just as Reese emerged from the gym, her gym bag slung over her shoulder. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the campus. In the creek bed, Captain Montgomery's uniform lay abandoned, its metals reflecting the fading light. The sound of expensive cars fading into the distance mixed with the gentle flow of water, while Reese walked toward the bus stop, still proud of finally sharing her father's truth. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Westbrook Academy's parking lot as Brittany and her friends dragged Captain Montgomery's uniform from the creek. Their designer shoes were muddy now, but excitement glowed in their eyes as they arranged their cruel finale. "Get your phones ready," Brittany commanded, pulling a silver lighter from her bag. We need to make sure everyone sees this." Madison's hands trembled as she held up her phone. "Maybe we should just record," Brittany snapped, laying the uniform on the asphalt. The metals clinked against the ground, their polished surface reflecting the setting sun. Through the gym's glass doors, they spotted Reese, leaving volleyball practice. Brittany's lips curved into a cruel smile as she flicked the lighter. The flame danced in the breeze. "Hey, Montgomery," she called out. "Looking for something?" Reese turned, her gym bag sliding from her shoulder as she registered the scene before her. Her father's uniform lay spread out on the ground, Brittany standing over it with the lighter. "No," Reese whispered, then louder. "No!" "Stop." She ran toward them, but Brittany had already touched the flame to the sleeve. The fire caught quickly, eating through the fabric that had survived war zones, only to meet destruction in a school parking lot. "What's wrong, scholarship girl?" Brittany taunted as Sophie and Taylor recorded with their phones. "Daddy's hand-me-downs not looking so special anymore?" Reese fell to her knees beside the burning uniform, tears streaming down her face. Her hands reached toward the flames, trying desperately to save what remained. The fire singed her fingers, but she didn't pull back. "Please," she begged, "please stop. It's all I have left of him." Brittany laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "All you have left of your fake hero dad? Please. Real heroes don't leave their families begging for charity." The flames consumed the chest of the uniform where Captain Montgomery's medals had hung. Reese managed to grab 2 of them before they fell into the fire, clutching them against her heart as she sobbed. "He died serving our country," Reese choked out, her voice raw with pain. "He was a Navy SEAL. He saved people." "And now you're trying to save his precious uniform?" Brittany mocked, holding her own phone steady to capture every moment of Reese's anguish. "Not so proud now, are you? This is what happens when you lie to everyone and pretend to be something you're not." Madison had lowered her phone, her face pale. "Brittany, this is too far." But Brittany ignored her, zooming in as Reese tried to smother the flames with her volleyball jacket. The synthetic material melted against the burning uniform, releasing acrid smoke into the air. "Your father wasn't special," Brittany continued, her words cutting through Reese's sobs. "He was just another poor soldier who couldn't even leave his family enough money to belong here, and now everyone's going to see exactly where you belong." The uniform was mostly ash now, its proud shape reduced to blackened fabric and melted buttons. Reese gathered what remained in her trembling hands, unmindful of the heat that blistered her palms. "Perfect," Sophie whispered, checking the video on her phone. "This is going to go viral." Taylor was already typing on her screen, posting it now. "Scholarship charity case loses it over daddy's old clothes." Reese stayed on her knees, holding the ruined uniform against her chest. Her father's medals pressed into her skin, their edges sharp against her racing heart. She could still smell his aftershave on what remained of the collar, now mixed with smoke and melted synthetic fabric. "Make sure you tag everyone," Brittany instructed, sliding her phone into her designer bag. "I want the whole school to see what happens when people like her try to rise above their station." The girls gathered their things, careful to avoid the ashes scattered across the parking lot. Their phones pinged with notifications as the video began to spread. "My work here is done," Brittany announced, heading toward her car. "Have fun explaining this to your mom, Montgomery. Maybe she can clean enough toilets to buy you a new one." Reese didn't move as their expensive cars pulled away, their engines purring into the distance. She stayed there, surrounded by the remains of her father's uniform, as the sun set behind Westbrook Academy's prestigious buildings. The metals in her hands had grown warm from her grip. They were the same metals her father had let her polish on Sunday mornings, teaching her the story behind each one. Now they were all she had left of those memories, of his proud smile as he wore this uniform. Her phone buzzed repeatedly in her gym bag, notifications of the video being shared, liked, commented on. Her moment of pride from the assembly had been reduced to this: kneeling in a parking lot, clutching burned fabric while her classmates watched her break down on their screens. She gathered every scrap she could find, carefully placing them in her gym bag. The strap felt heavier now, weighted down with loss. The sun had almost disappeared, casting long shadows across the parking lot where her father's memory had been desecrated for likes and shares. In her pocket, her phone continued to vibrate with incoming notifications, each one announcing another viewer of her humiliation, another witness to the destruction of her father's legacy. By midnight, the video had spread like wildfire. Reese lay in her darkened bedroom, watching the view count climb higher with each refresh. 3,000 views, 4,000, 5,000. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications, each one a fresh wound to her heart. The caption, "Poor girl's fake hero dad," floated above the footage of her desperate attempts to save the burning uniform. Comments poured in beneath, "OMG, what a total faker. Scholarship trash exposed. Did you see her crying over that old uniform? Pathetic." Reese turned off her phone, but sleep wouldn't come. Her bandaged hands throbbed where the flames had burned them. The remnants of her father's uniform lay carefully wrapped in tissue paper beside her bed, the rescued medals placed reverently on her nightstand. Morning arrived too quickly. Patricia noticed Reese's red eyes at breakfast but said nothing, just squeezed her daughter's shoulder before leaving for her early hospital shift. The walk to school felt like marching toward execution. Whispers followed Reese through the hallways. Students held up their phones as she passed, replaying her humiliation with cruel smirks. Even teachers gave her pitying looks, quickly averting their eyes when she caught them staring. She found Brittany holding court by the lockers, surrounded by her usual admirers. The rage that had simmered all night finally boiled over. "How could you?" Reese demanded, her voice cutting through the morning chatter. That uniform survived war zones. It survived Afghanistan. But it couldn't survive your cruelty. Brittany turned slowly, her designer bag swinging from her arm. "Oh, look, everyone. Our little charity case has found her voice." "My father died serving this country," Reese said, stepping closer. "He was a hero. A real hero? Not someone who builds themselves up by destroying others. A real hero would have left his family with more than old clothes and empty medals," Brittany sneered. "Face it, Montgomery, you don't belong here. You never did." Something snapped inside Reese. Years of military training with her father took over. Before anyone could react, she grabbed Brittany's shoulders and pushed her backward. Brittany stumbled, crashing into the row of lockers. The metal doors rattled with the impact. Brittany's shriek echoed through the hallway. She launched herself at Reese, perfectly manicured nails aiming for her face. They grappled, knocking over a display case of academic trophies. Glass shattered across the floor as students gathered to watch, phones recording this new drama. "Girls, stop this immediately!" Principal Davidson's voice thundered through the chaos. Security guards pulled them apart, Reese still struggling while Brittany burst into theatrical tears. "She attacked me," Brittany wailed, checking her reflection in her phone camera. "She's completely unstable." Principal Davidson surveyed the broken display case, his face darkening. "Both of you to my office? Now." In his office, Brittany spoke first, her voice trembling with fake sincerity. "I was just standing there and she went crazy. Everyone saw it. Just like in the video yesterday, she can't control herself." "The video where you burned my father's uniform?" Reese countered, her hands clenched in her lap. "Where you mocked his sacrifice?" Principal Davidson held up his hand. "Miss Montgomery, there's no proof of who damaged the uniform. However, this morning's violence is inexcusable. You destroyed school property and attacked another student." "But sir," Reese protested, "Miss Hawthorne's parents are major donors to this school," he continued smoothly. "They've already called about yesterday's incident. They're concerned about their daughter's safety." Reese felt the blood drain from her face. "You're taking her side? After what she did?" I'm protecting this institution, he replied coldly. Your scholarship is now under review. One more incident, and you'll face immediate expulsion. Do I make myself clear? The injustice burned worse than the flames had. Crystal clear, sir. The truth doesn't matter here. Only money does. A knock at the office door interrupted them. Patricia Montgomery stood in the doorway, still in her hospital cleaning uniform. She clutched a paper bag containing the burned remains of James's dress blues. Mrs. Montgomery, Principal Davidson said, clearly uncomfortable. I didn't call you yet. A parent showed me the video this morning, Patricia said quietly. Her tired eyes took in the scene. Brittany's crocodile tears, her daughter's defeated posture, the principal's carefully blank expression. I came as soon as I could. Is this what my husband died for? So his memory could be desecrated for social media likes? She opened the bag, letting the charred fabric spill onto the principal's desk. The smell of smoke still clung to the remains. This uniform survived firefights, Patricia continued, her voice growing stronger. It survived the mission that killed my husband, but it couldn't survive one afternoon at your prestigious school. Principal Davidson shifted in his chair. Mrs. Montgomery, while the incident with the uniform is unfortunate, your daughter's violent behavior today— My daughter was defending her father's honor, Patricia cut him off. Something this school clearly has no concept of. She turned to Brittany, who shrank back from the intensity in her gaze. You think because your parents have money, you can destroy whatever and whoever you want? My husband gave his life protecting spoiled children like you. The principal cleared his throat. Mrs. Montgomery, please. Let's keep this professional. Professional? Patricia laughed bitterly. Like professionally ignoring bullying because the bully's parents write big checks? My James would be ashamed of this place. She gathered the uniform remnants carefully back into the bag, handling each piece like the precious relic it was. Come on, Reese, we're done here. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Torres slouched in his office chair at Naval Base Coronado, mindlessly scrolling through social media during his lunch break. His turkey sandwich sat half-eaten beside his keyboard as videos and posts flicked past. Then something made his finger freeze mid-scroll. A teenage girl desperately clawing at burning fabric. Navy dress blues going up in flames. The distinctive insignia of the Navy SEALs catching the sunlight before disappearing into smoke. Torres sat up straight, his sandwich forgotten. He hit play, watching in growing horror as the scene unfolded. The video's cruel title, Poor Girl's Fake Hero Dad, made his blood boil. But it was the uniform that held his attention. He'd seen that exact uniform 3 years ago in Afghanistan, worn by one of the finest men he'd ever served with. Dear God, he whispered, that's Montgomery's girl. His hands shook as he replayed the video, focusing on the young woman's face. The same determined jaw, the same fierce eyes. She was James Montgomery's daughter, without a doubt. The daughter they'd been searching for since that terrible day in Kandahar province. Torres grabbed his phone, punching in a number he knew by heart. Connor, drop whatever you're doing and get to my office. Now I found them. I found Montgomery's family. Within 15 minutes, his office was crowded with 4 other Navy SEALs, all members of the original SEAL Team 7. They watched the video in grim silence, their faces hardening at the sight of their brother's uniform being destroyed. 3 years, Lieutenant Mike Connor said, running a hand through his graying hair. 3 years we've been trying to find them. How did we lose them in the first place? Torres pulled up the digital files they'd gathered over the years. The bureaucratic nightmare after James died, remember? His family had just moved to a new base housing complex. Their contact information wasn't updated in the system. When the notification team went to their old address, they were gone, finished Chief Petty Officer Ray Martinez, his voice tight with anger. And somehow their new address never made it into the system. But what about the benefits, the pension? Same problem, Torres said, clicking through documents. Wrong addresses, bounced checks, papers sent to offices that no longer existed. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, the family had disappeared into the system. "Look at this," Connor said, pointing to his tablet. He'd been researching while they talked. The girl's name is Reese Montgomery. She goes to Westbrook Academy in Connecticut on scholarship. Mother's name is Patricia, works as a hospital cleaner. They're barely getting by. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Their brother's family had been struggling alone for 3 years, while his death benefits and pension sat unclaimed in government accounts. "James saved our entire squad that day," Martinez said quietly. "Took out 3 enemy positions by himself. Gave us time to get to the extraction point. And this is how his family's been living?" Torres stood up, his decision made. "Not anymore. Connor, call Judge Advocate General's office. I want every piece of paperwork ready by tomorrow morning. Martinez, get our contact at the Medal of Honor Society on the line. They need to know about this. Williams, start booking flights to Connecticut. And someone get me the number for Westbrook Academy." The room burst into activity. Phones came out, calls were made, plans set in motion. These men had fought together, bled together, mourned together. Now they would move heaven and earth to right this wrong. "James's Medal of Honor ceremony," Connor said suddenly. His family wasn't there. They never even knew he received it posthumously. Torres nodded grimly. "Add that to the list. His widow and daughter need to receive that medal properly, with full honors." He watched the video one more time, his heart aching at Reese's desperate attempts to save her father's uniform. He remembered James talking about his little girl during quiet moments between missions, how proud he was of her strength, her determination, how he'd taught her self-defense moves, preparing her for a world that wasn't always fair. "Sir," Williams called from his laptop, "flights booked for tomorrow morning. Whole team can be in Connecticut by noon." "Good," Torres replied, "because we're not just going to fix the paperwork, we're going to make this right, all of it." Martinez looked up from his phone. "Just got off with the Medal of Honor Society. They're furious about the video, want to help any way they can." Torres surveyed his team, men who had fought alongside James Montgomery in the worst conditions imaginable, men who had watched him make the ultimate sacrifice, men who would now fight just as hard for his family. "James died making sure we all made it home," Torres said, his voice firm. "Now it's our turn to make sure his family is taken care of, the way it always should have been." The SEALs nodded in unified determination. They had failed their brother once by losing track of his family. They wouldn't fail him again. The crisp November air carried the sound of synchronized footsteps across Westbrook Academy's manicured grounds. Students pressed against classroom windows, watching in awe as 12 Navy SEALs in full dress blues marched in perfect formation toward the administration building. Their medals and ribbons gleamed in the morning sun, creating an impressive display of military excellence. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Torres led the column, his face set with determination. Behind him, Lieutenant Mike Connor and the rest of their brothers-in-arms moved with practiced precision, their presence commanding respect and attention. The sight of 12 decorated warriors in their dress uniforms created an unmistakable message of authority and purpose. Inside the administration building, Principal Robert Davidson's secretary stared open-mouthed as the SEALs filed into the waiting area. Torres stepped forward, his voice firm but controlled. "We're here to see Principal Davidson, immediately." The secretary fumbled with her phone, pressing the intercom button. "Sir, there are Navy SEALs here to see you." Davidson's irritated voice crackled through the speaker. "I'm in a meeting. Tell them to make an appointment." Torres leaned over the desk, speaking directly into the intercom. "This concerns Captain James Montgomery, Medal of Honor recipient, and the harassment of his daughter at your school. We're not leaving." There was a long pause before Davidson's door opened. The principal emerged, his usual confident demeanor faltering at the sight of 12 decorated warriors filling his office's waiting room. Gentlemen, I don't appreciate this interruption. And we don't appreciate seeing our brother's uniform burned while your students filmed it, Connor cut in, his voice sharp, or watching his daughter being humiliated while your administration did nothing. Davidson's face reddened. That situation has been handled internally. By threatening to expel the victim, Torres stepped forward, towering over the principal. We've spent the morning reviewing complaints filed by military families at this school. Interesting pattern we found. Lieutenant Ray Martinez pulled out a tablet, reading from its screen. In the past 5 years, 8 students from military families have been forced to withdraw due to disciplinary issues. All of them scholarship students, all after conflicts with wealthy, full-paying students. Davidson's complexion shifted from red to pale. Those cases were all properly documented. They were properly buried, Torres corrected. Just like the complaints about Brittany Hawthorne and her systematic harassment of Reese Montgomery. We found those too. The SEALs moved into Davidson's office without waiting for permission, filling the space with an imposing presence. Their medals told stories of valor, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication, a sharp contrast to the principal's wall of donor appreciation plaques. Captain Montgomery died, saving our entire team, Torres said, his voice carrying the weight of memory. He received the Medal of Honor posthumously for his actions. And while his daughter struggles to stay in school on scholarship, you protect the students who desecrated his uniform. Davidson retreated behind his desk, trying to regain control of the situation. The school has certain obligations to our donor families. And we have obligations to our fallen brother, Connor interrupted. His daughter will finish her education here, free from harassment. The students responsible for burning his uniform will face appropriate consequences, and your discriminatory practices against military families end today. Martinez stepped forward, placing a business card on Davidson's desk. The Medal of Honor Society's legal team would be very interested in reviewing your scholarship policies. So would the media, I imagine. The threat hung in the air, clear and unmistakable. Davidson's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the card. What exactly do you want? Torres leaned forward, planting both hands on Davidson's desk. First, you'll reverse any disciplinary actions against Reese Montgomery. Second, Brittany Hawthorne and her accomplices will face suspension, at minimum. Third, you'll implement new anti-harassment policies specifically protecting scholarship students and military families. And if I refuse? The SEALs exchanged glances, a silent communication born from years of combat operations together. Connor spoke next, his tone measured but firm. Then, tomorrow morning, 12 Medal of Honor Society representatives will be here with their legal team. By afternoon, every major news network will have footage of Captain Montgomery's daughter being tormented while your school protected her harassers. By evening, your donor families will be answering questions about why their children burned a Medal of Honor recipient's uniform. Davidson's resistance crumbled visibly. He reached for his phone with shaking hands. I'll call an emergency board meeting. We can discuss policy changes. No discussion, Torres cut him off. You make this right today, or we make it very public tomorrow. Captain Montgomery gave his life protecting his brothers. Now we're here protecting his daughter. The principal looked around his office, taking in the wall of combat-hardened faces. These weren't parents he could intimidate or donors he could placate. These were warriors who had fought alongside James Montgomery, who had watched him make the ultimate sacrifice, and who would not stop until justice was done. I'll start the paperwork immediately, Davidson said, his voice barely above a whisper. Torres nodded, straightening to his full height. We'll wait. And Principal Davidson, this is just the beginning. We're not leaving until every wrong done to the Montgomery family is made right. The SEALs adjusted their positions around the office, making it clear they weren't going anywhere. They had lost track of James Montgomery's family once before. They wouldn't lose sight of them again. Principal Davidson's office fell silent as Chief Petty Officer Torres opened a polished wooden case he'd been carrying. Inside, nestled against dark blue velvet, lay the Medal of Honor, its light blue ribbon and golden star gleaming under the office lights. Reese and Patricia Montgomery, who had been summoned to the office, stared at the medal in stunned silence. 3 years ago, Torres began, his voice thick with emotion. Your father saved our entire squad during an ambush in Afghanistan's Korangal Valley. We were pinned down, taking heavy fire from 3 directions. James... He paused, collecting himself. Your father noticed the enemy maneuvering to throw grenades into our position. Lieutenant Connor stepped forward, continuing the story as Torres composed himself. Without hesitation, Captain Montgomery charged the enemy position. He engaged multiple fighters single-handedly, drawing their fire away from us. His actions gave us the chance to regroup and counterattack. Reese gripped her mother's hand tightly, tears streaming down her face, as she learned for the first time how her father died. He was hit, Torres said softly, but he kept fighting. He eliminated the threat entirely before... He swallowed hard. Your father's last words were about you both. He made me promise we'd look after his family. Patricia covered her mouth with her trembling hand. We never knew. They just told us he died in combat. Captain Montgomery was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, Martinez explained, pulling out an official document. The highest military decoration our nation can bestow. But when we tried to locate you for the ceremony, you'd already moved from base housing. The paperwork, it got lost in the system. Torres lifted the Medal of Honor from its case with reverence. This belongs to your family. James earned it with his blood, protecting his brothers in arms, protecting us. Reese reached out with shaking hands as Torres presented her the medal. The medal felt cool against her palm, its weight somehow both heavy and uplifting. She traced the star's points with her finger, finally understanding the full measure of her father's heroism. There's more, Connor said, producing a thick envelope. The bureaucratic mess that lost track of you also prevented the proper processing of death benefits and back pay. We've spent the last 24 hours cutting through red tape with the Pentagon. Patricia looked confused. Death benefits? Martinez stepped forward with another document. As the family of a Medal of Honor recipient, you're entitled to significant benefits. 3 years of back pay, housing allowance, and education benefits have been approved for immediate release. The total amount comes to $375,000. The color drained from Patricia's face as she stared at the figure on the document. Reese steadied her mother, who swayed slightly in her chair. That's not all, Torres added. The Medal of Honor Society provides additional support for recipients' families, full college scholarships for children, medical coverage, housing assistance, everything James would have wanted for you both. Reese clutched the medal to her chest, her father's sacrifice taking on new meaning. He wasn't just deployed, she whispered. He was a hero, a real hero. The highest kind of hero, Torres confirmed, the kind who gives everything to save others. We're here today because of your father. Every breath we take, every moment we have with our own families, it's all because of James Montgomery. Principal Davidson, who had been watching silently from behind his desk, cleared his throat. I had no idea Captain Montgomery was a Medal of Honor recipient. No, Torres cut him off sharply. You were too busy protecting wealthy bullies while his daughter suffered. That changes today. Patricia wiped her eyes, sitting straighter in her chair. All this time, we've been struggling, hiding the truth because we thought it would hurt less. You don't have to struggle anymore, Connor assured her, and you never have to hide who James was. His story deserves to be told. His sacrifice deserves to be honored. Reese looked down at the medal, seeing her father's familiar smile in its golden reflection. The weight of their 3-year secret lifted from her shoulders. replaced by pride in her father's incredible courage. "The ceremony," Torres said gently, "we'd like to hold it here at the school. Let everyone understand who James Montgomery really was. Let them see the true meaning of sacrifice and honor." Through her tears, Reese nodded. The medal caught the light, sending bright reflections across the office walls. In that moment, she felt her father's presence more strongly than she had in 3 years. Not as a painful memory to hide, but as a shining example of courage and love that would light her path forward. The heavy oak doors of Principal Davidson's office burst open as Robert Hawthorne strode in, his expensive Italian suit and perfectly coiffed silver hair radiating authority. He stopped short at the sight of 12 Navy SEALs in dress uniforms standing at parade rest around the room. "What's this?" Hawthorne demanded, his lips curling into a dismissive smile. "Some kind of military theater?" Chief Petty Officer Torres turned slowly, his weathered face impassive. "Mr. Hawthorne, we were just discussing your daughter's involvement in destroying a Medal of Honor recipient's dress uniform." Hawthorne waved his hand dismissively. "Look, I understand there's been an unfortunate incident. I'm prepared to write a check to replace the uniform and make this all go away." He pulled a leather checkbook from his jacket pocket. "Name your price." "The price?" Torres's voice remained eerily calm. "You think you can put a price on desecrating the memory of a war hero?" "Everyone has a price," Hawthorne said, uncapping his Mont Blanc pen. "That's how the real world works. Now shall we discuss numbers like civilized people?" Torres stepped forward, his combat ribbons and service medals catching the light. "Perhaps we should discuss numbers, Mr. Hawthorne. Like the 37 combat missions I led in Afghanistan, or the 12 companies in my security consulting firm's portfolio, or maybe," he paused meaningfully, "the 7 shell corporations you're using to launder money through your Singapore real estate ventures." The color drained from Hawthorne's face. His pen clattered to the floor. "You see," Torres continued, "before founding Torres Security International, I spent 15 years in military intelligence. My firm now provides cybersecurity for half the Fortune 500 companies. We have resources." Hawthorne tried to recover his composure. "Are you threatening me?" "Threatening?" Torres smiled without warmth. "I'm simply sharing information, like the details of your offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, or the falsified environmental impact studies for your latest development project." Principal Davidson shifted uncomfortably in his chair as Hawthorne's carefully constructed facade began to crack. "You can't prove any of that," Hawthorne sputtered, but his hand trembled as he reached for his fallen pen. "Actually," Torres said, producing a thumb drive, "everything is right here. Documentation, account numbers, emails. My team spent the night putting together quite a comprehensive package." Lieutenant Connor stepped forward. "We protect our own, Mr. Hawthorne. Captain Montgomery gave his life saving our team. His daughter deserves better than your money or your daughter's cruelty." Hawthorne's arrogance crumbled as he realized the power dynamic had shifted dramatically. These weren't simple military men he could buy off or intimidate. They were highly trained professionals with resources that matched or exceeded his own. "What do you want?" Hawthorne asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Torres's expression hardened. "First, your daughter will face consequences for her actions. No more hiding behind daddy's lawyers. Second, you'll establish a scholarship fund for military families at Westbrook Academy. Let's say $10 million to start. Third, you'll make a public apology to the Montgomery family. And if I refuse? Then this drive finds its way to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." Torres tucked the thumb drive back into his pocket. "I hear they're particularly interested in real estate developers who manipulate property values through shell companies." Hawthorne slumped into a chair, his carefully maintained power stripped away. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "We're Navy SEALs, Mr. Hawthorne. Planning and execution are what we do." Torres's voice softened slightly. Your wealth doesn't make you better than anyone else in this room. Captain Montgomery's sacrifice, his Medal of Honor. Those things have value you couldn't match with all your billions. Reese watched the exchange in amazement, still holding her father's medal. The man who had enabled his daughter's cruelty for years, who had bought his way out of every consequence, was finally facing something his money couldn't solve. I'll do what you ask, Hawthorne said, defeated. Just keep that information private. Unlike your daughter, we don't believe in public humiliation, Torres replied. Honor, integrity, and justice. Those are our weapons of choice. The real estate mogul nodded slowly, understanding for perhaps the first time that true power came in many forms, and that his wealth was not the shield he had always believed it to be. Torres handed Hawthorne a document. The terms are outlined here. I expect your signature by tomorrow morning. Remember, Mr. Hawthorne, we'll be watching. The businessman took the papers with trembling hands, his carefully constructed world of privilege and immunity crumbling around him. In the face of true honor and sacrifice, his wealth and connections meant nothing. Dismissed, Torres said quietly, and Robert Hawthorne, the man who had dominated every room he'd entered for decades, slunk out of the office like a scolded schoolboy. The following morning, 3 black SUVs with federal government plates pulled into Westbrook Academy's circular driveway. Special Agent Sarah Chen of the Department of Defense Criminal Investigation Division stepped out, followed by a team of federal investigators. The sight of their badges and stern expressions sent ripples of anxiety through the normally unflappable private school. Principal Davidson's secretary frantically buzzed his office. Sir, there are federal agents here regarding the incident. Inside the office, Brittany Hawthorne and her 4 friends sat with their parents, already meeting with their hastily assembled legal team. The door opened, and Agent Chen strode in, her badge gleaming. I'm Special Agent Chen. We're here to investigate the willful destruction of United States military property and the harassment of a service member's family. She surveyed the room, her gaze settling on the teenagers. The burning of Captain Montgomery's dress uniform constitutes a federal offense under Title 18 of the United States Code. Robert Hawthorne's attorney stepped forward. My clients are minors. Surely we can handle this through the school's disciplinary process. The destruction of military property is a federal crime, Agent Chen replied firmly. The fact that it belonged to a Medal of Honor recipient makes this a priority case. Add to that the video evidence of premeditated harassment and the targeting of a military family. She let the implications hang in the air. Brittany's perfectly maintained composure cracked. But Daddy always fixes everything, she blurted out, mascara starting to run. Agent Chen turned to her. This isn't a parking ticket or a shoplifting charge, Miss Hawthorne. You deliberately destroyed federal property while filming it for social media. Your actions have serious consequences. The other parents shifted uncomfortably as 2 more agents entered with evidence bags containing the burned uniform remnants and printed copies of social media posts. Furthermore, Agent Chen continued, our investigation has revealed a pattern of systematic harassment targeting scholarship students, particularly those from military families. The video evidence you so helpfully provided documents multiple instances of criminal behavior. One of Brittany's friends burst into tears. We didn't know it was illegal. We just thought... That's the problem, Agent Chen cut in. You didn't think about consequences. You assumed your parents' influence would protect you from any repercussions. The door opened again, and 2 Treasury Department agents entered. Mr. Hawthorne, one said, we need to speak with you regarding some irregularities in your real estate holdings that came to light during this investigation. Robert Hawthorne's face went ashen. The information Torres had threatened to expose was now in federal hands. His attorney quickly whispered in his ear, but the damage was done. The Treasury Department is particularly interested in your offshore accounts and the shell corporations connected to your Singapore properties, the agent continued. We'll need you to come with us to answer some questions. The other parents watched in shock as Robert Hawthorne, the untouchable real estate mogul, was escorted from the office. His wife clutched her designer handbag like a shield, mascara streaming down her face. Agent Chen turned back to the teenagers. Each of you will be charged as juveniles for destruction of federal property, harassment, and civil rights violations. Given your ages, you'll likely avoid detention, but this will involve community service, mandatory counseling, and a permanent record. A record? One of the parents gasped. But that could affect college admissions. Actions have consequences, Agent Chen stated firmly, something these young people clearly need to learn. Brittany's lawyer tried to intervene. Perhaps we could discuss some form of financial settlement? This isn't something you can simply write a check to make disappear, Agent Chen replied. The U.S. Attorney's Office takes these cases very seriously. Captain Montgomery gave his life for his country. His uniform represented his service and sacrifice. The gravity of their situation finally seemed to sink in. The 5 teenagers, who had never faced real consequences in their privileged lives, sat pale and trembling. Their parents, accustomed to solving problems with money and connections, looked equally lost. Officers will escort each of you to the federal building downtown for formal questioning, Agent Chen announced. Your attorneys may accompany you. I suggest you cooperate fully. As if on cue, more agents entered the office. The teenagers were led out one by one, their parents trailing behind with shell-shocked expressions. The hallways of Westbrook Academy fell silent as students pressed against lockers, watching the procession of federal agents escorting their formerly untouchable classmates. Principal Davidson sat at his desk, his own attorney whispering urgently in his ear about the school's potential liability. The carefully maintained facade of privilege and immunity had shattered, revealing that even the wealthy and connected were not above the law. Outside his office, Agent Chen spoke quietly with Chief Petty Officer Torres, who had arrived to witness the proceedings. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention," she said. "The evidence you provided opened up several investigations we've been trying to pursue for years." Torres nodded solemnly. Sometimes people need to learn that money can't buy honor or erase consequences. Captain Montgomery's sacrifice deserved better than their cruelty. They watched as the federal vehicles pulled away from the school, carrying their privileged passengers toward a harsh lesson in accountability. The message was clear. No amount of wealth could shield them from the ramifications of their choices. The Westbrook Academy auditorium buzzed with nervous energy as students filed in for the mandatory assembly. Principal Davidson had called the entire school together to address the recent unfortunate events. As the email had delicately phrased it, Reese sat in the middle section, surrounded by a protective circle of Navy SEALs in their dress uniforms. Chief Petty Officer Torres stood at the end of her row, his presence both reassuring and commanding. Other members of SEAL Team 7 were strategically positioned throughout the auditorium, their watchful eyes scanning for any signs of trouble. Principal Davidson approached the podium, looking uncomfortable in his tailored suit. "In light of recent events, we need to discuss the serious matter of bullying and harassment within our school community." His voice wavered slightly as he continued. "We have federal investigators on campus, and several students are facing legal consequences for their actions." A commotion erupted from the back of the auditorium. Brittany Hawthorne burst through the doors, her designer clothes disheveled, and her eyes wild with anger. Her parents' arrest and the pending charges had clearly pushed her over the edge. "This is all your fault," she screamed, pointing at Reese. "You ruined everything." Before anyone could react, Brittany sprinted down the center aisle. Torres moved to intercept her, but she was faster than expected. She launched herself at Reese, manicured nails aimed at her face. But Reese was ready. In one fluid motion, she stepped aside and deflected Brittany's attack, using the momentum to guide her opponent past her. The move was precise, controlled, clearly practiced. Brittany stumbled. Shocked by the defensive maneuver, she spun around, face contorted with rage, and charged again. This time, Reese executed a perfect arm block, followed by a swift leg sweep that sent Brittany sprawling. The auditorium fell silent. Students and teachers watched in astonishment as the scholarship student demonstrated combat skills nobody knew she possessed. "My father started teaching me when I was 6 years old," Reese announced clearly, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. "He said a SEAL's daughter should know how to protect herself." Brittany scrambled to her feet, mascara streaking down her face. "You're lying. You're just some poor charity case pretending to be special." She rushed forward again, but this time Reese moved with military precision. She blocked Brittany's wild punch, trapped her arm in a controlled hold, and used her attacker's own momentum to pin her against the nearest wall. The move was expertly executed. Minimal force, maximum control. "I am Captain James Montgomery's daughter," Reese declared firmly, maintaining the hold without causing pain. "He taught me more than just combat skills. He taught me about honor, respect, and standing up to bullies." Torres and his team moved in quickly, their training evident in their coordinated response. "That's enough, ladies," Torres said, his voice calm but authoritative. "Let's not add assault charges to an already complicated situation." Reese immediately released the hold, stepping back with disciplined control. Brittany slumped to the floor, her carefully constructed world of privilege completely shattered. "Miss Hawthorne," Principal Davidson called out, finding his voice at last, "please report to my office immediately. Your parents' attorney is waiting." 2 SEALs escorted Brittany out while others maintained their protective positions around Reese. The student body watched in stunned silence, witnessing the final dismantling of their former social hierarchy. Torres placed a supportive hand on Reese's shoulder. "Your father would be proud," he said quietly. "You showed both skill and restraint, exactly what he taught you." Reese stood tall, her father's fighting spirit evident in her stance. The whispers started spreading through the auditorium, not about the scholarship student or the poor girl, but about Captain Montgomery's daughter, who carried his strength and honor in more ways than anyone had imagined. Principal Davidson cleared his throat. Miss Montgomery demonstrated remarkable self-control in defending herself. Perhaps this is a lesson to us all about making assumptions about our fellow students. The assembly concluded shortly after, but the image of Reese's controlled defense lingered in everyone's minds. She had proved herself her father's daughter not just through his Medal of Honor or his sacrifice, but through the disciplined strength he had instilled in her. As students filed out, many stopped to look at Reese with new respect. She wasn't just the girl whose father died a hero. She was living proof of his legacy, carrying forward both his fighting skills and his moral courage. Torres gathered his team around Reese as they prepared to leave the auditorium. "Your father started teaching you those moves when you were just a little girl," he said, smiling at the memory. "I remember him talking about it during deployment. Said his daughter would never be defenseless." Reese nodded, emotion filling her eyes. "He made it feel like a game back then. I never thought I'd actually need to use it." "You used it exactly as he taught you," Torres assured her. "Defensive moves only, minimum force, maximum control. That's the SEAL way. We fight to protect, not to harm." The team escorted Reese through the halls of Westbrook Academy, their presence a reminder that she was no longer alone in carrying her father's legacy. She had demonstrated more than just physical skills today. She had shown the same quiet strength and disciplined honor that had made her father a hero. The following Monday morning, the Westbrook Academy School Board gathered for an emergency meeting in the main conference room. The polished mahogany table reflected the tense faces of its members as Chief Petty Officer Marcus Torres laid out a devastating presentation. "Over the past 5 years," Torres said, his voice steady and authoritative, "Principal Davidson has systematically denied or discouraged applications from military families. Our investigation revealed 47 cases where qualified children of service members were rejected despite meeting all academic requirements." Principal Davidson's face grew pale as Torres clicked through slide after slide of evidence. Charts showed the declining acceptance rates of military dependents. Emails exposed Davidson's explicit instructions to admissions staff to find reasons to reject these applications. Board member Elizabeth Chen leaned forward, her expression grave. This is deeply disturbing. How did this discrimination continue unchecked for so long? Because Principal Davidson buried the evidence in bureaucratic paperwork, Torres explained, placing a thick folder on the table. But Navy SEALs are trained to uncover hidden threats. This wasn't nearly as well concealed as he thought. The board's chairman, Dr. William Foster, removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. "James, I think we've seen enough. Please clear out your office by the end of the day." Davidson shot up from his chair. "You can't do this! I've given 15 years to this school." 15 years of discrimination and prejudice, Dr. Foster corrected. "You're fortunate we're not pursuing legal action. Though the federal authorities might have something to say about that." Across campus, in the disciplinary hearing room, Brittany Hawthorne sat rigid in her chair, her designer clothes unable to mask her fear. Her father, Robert Hawthorne, wasn't present. He was dealing with his own federal investigation into suspicious real estate practices. "Miss Hawthorne," the disciplinary committee head stated, "the destruction of Captain Montgomery's uniform constitutes a federal offense. The FBI has formally charged you as an adult due to the severity of the crime and your role as the ringleader." Brittany's expensive lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The evidence was overwhelming. Dozens of text messages planning the theft, social media posts bragging about the burning, and security camera footage of the entire incident. "Furthermore," the committee head continued, "your actions violate every standard of conduct this institution holds dear. The board has voted unanimously for your immediate expulsion." Tears streaked Brittany's makeup as she looked around the room. None of her former friends would meet her eyes. They had all turned on her the moment federal charges were mentioned, each one's family cutting deals to protect their own children by providing evidence against the ringleader. In the hallway outside, Reese Montgomery stood with Chief Torres and her mother Patricia, watching as Brittany emerged from the hearing room. The former Queen Bee of Westbrook Academy walked past without her usual confident strut, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Your father would be proud of how you've handled this," Torres said quietly to Reese. "You showed strength without seeking revenge." Patricia squeezed her daughter's hand. The system is finally working the way it should. Down in the main office, a new sign was being mounted on the wall: Military Family Support Office. It was just the first of many changes sweeping through Westbrook Academy. The board had approved a comprehensive overhaul of admission policies, with specific provisions to protect military families and scholarship students. Dr. Foster personally oversaw the implementation of new anti-bullying measures, working closely with Torres's security consulting firm to establish clear guidelines and consequences. The changes sent ripples through the wealthy student body. The era of privileged impunity was over. Later that afternoon, news broke about Robert Hawthorne's empire. Federal investigators had uncovered a web of fraudulent real estate deals, tax evasion, and illegal property schemes. The man who had once threatened to destroy anyone who challenged him watched helplessly as his business crumbled. "The mighty have fallen," Torres remarked, showing Patricia and Reese the news on his phone. "Sometimes justice takes time, but it always arrives." In the school courtyard, students gathered in small groups, discussing the day's events. The social hierarchy had shifted dramatically. Brittany's former inner circle scattered, each member trying to distance themselves from their former leader's disgrace. A freshman girl approached Reese hesitantly. "My dad's in the Air Force," she said. "I was afraid to tell anyone before, but thank you for changing things here." More students began sharing their stories. Children of soldiers, sailors, and airmen who had hidden their military connections to avoid harassment. Westbrook Academy was transforming from a bastion of privilege into a true community of learning. The final blow to the old guard came when the school board announced a new scholarship program specifically for children of fallen service members, named in honor of Captain James Montgomery. The first recipient would start in the fall semester. As the day drew to a close, Reese stood in front of her father's new memorial display in the school's main hall. The partially burned uniform had been replaced with his Medal of Honor, photographs, and a plaque describing his heroic final mission. It was a permanent reminder that true worth isn't measured by wealth or social status, but by character and sacrifice. Patricia wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Your father changed lives even after he was gone," she said softly. "He would be so proud of how you carried on his legacy of courage and integrity." Torres nodded in agreement. Sometimes it takes one person standing up for what's right to transform an entire system. You and your father both proved that. The halls of Westbrook Academy would never be the same. The corrupt system that had protected the privileged while punishing the vulnerable had been dismantled, replaced by something stronger and more just. In the end, honor had triumphed over wealth, truth over power, and courage over cruelty. The crisp autumn morning painted the United States Naval Academy in shades of gold and amber. Historic Bancroft Hall stood proudly against the clear blue sky as families gathered for the plebe induction ceremony. Among them, Reese Montgomery adjusted her pristine white uniform, her fingers brushing against her father's Medal of Honor carefully pinned to her chest. "Here, let me help you with that," Chief Petty Officer Marcus Torres said, stepping forward to straighten the medal. His own dress uniform gleamed in the morning light. "Your father wore this same medal during his academy induction. Now it's your turn to carry on the tradition." Patricia Montgomery watched her daughter with tears of pride in her eyes. She looked different now, more confident, well-rested, and professionally dressed in her new role as Torres Security's Director of Personnel Operations. The past few months had transformed both their lives in ways they never imagined possible. "I still can't believe this is real," Patricia said, smoothing a wrinkle from Reese's uniform. "Your father always dreamed you might follow in his footsteps, but he never wanted to pressure you." Reese stood taller, her shoulders squared with newfound confidence. "I think he was preparing me all along," she said. "All those early morning workouts, the combat training he called games, he was laying the foundation." Around them, 11 more Navy SEALs in full dress uniform created a protective semicircle. These men, who had once served alongside Captain James Montgomery, had become Reese's honorary uncles. They had helped her prepare for the Academy's physical and academic challenges, sharing stories of her father's leadership while training her in advanced combat techniques. Lieutenant Commander Jack Reynolds, her father's former commanding officer, approached with an envelope in his hand. "Your appointment papers, Miss Montgomery," he said formally, then broke into a warm smile. "Though soon it'll be Midshipman Montgomery. Your father earned his place here through merit, just as you have. Your test scores and physical fitness evaluations were exceptional." Reese accepted the envelope with steady hands. 3 months ago, she had been hiding in shame at Westbrook Academy. Now she stood proud, surrounded by her father's brothers in arms, ready to begin her own journey of service. "The Academy's lucky to have you," Torres said. "Your father's determination lives on in you. I saw it the day you defended yourself against those bullies, and I see it now in how you've prepared for this moment." The 12 SEALs moved into formation as the ceremony began. They created an honor guard unlike any other in the Academy's history. Decorated warriors, standing watch over their fallen brother's daughter. Other families turned to stare, whispering about the unprecedented display of military solidarity. As the commandant called the new plebes forward alphabetically, Reese felt her heart pound with anticipation. The morning sun caught the Medal of Honor on her chest, sending sparkles of light dancing across her white uniform. "Montgomery, Reese Elizabeth," the commandant announced. Reese stepped forward, walking between the lines of Navy SEALs who stood at perfect attention. Each step carried her closer to her future, away from the scared girl who had hidden her father's death, and toward the confident young woman who embraced his legacy. Patricia watched through tears as her daughter reached the stage. Gone was the exhausted look of constant worry from her face, replaced by the serene pride of a mother whose child had found her path. Her new position at Torres Security had given them financial stability and dignity, allowing both Montgomery women to finally stop merely surviving and start truly living. The commandant administered the oath of office, and Reese's clear voice rang out across the courtyard. I, Reese Elizabeth Montgomery, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. As she spoke the sacred words, 12 Navy SEALs stood guard, their presence a testament to the unbreakable bonds of military brotherhood. They were no longer just her father's teammates. They were her protectors, mentors, and family. When the oath concluded, Torres was the first to salute her. "Welcome to the service, Midshipman Montgomery," he said formally, then added in a softer voice, "Your father saw this day in you before you could see it in yourself." One by one, the other SEALs saluted, each adding their own words of welcome and encouragement. These men, who had searched for 3 years to find James Montgomery's family, now stood as guardians of his greatest legacy, his daughter. Patricia embraced Reese, careful not to wrinkle her uniform. "You're not just his daughter anymore," she whispered. "You're his successor." Lieutenant Commander Reynolds presented Reese with her father's Naval Academy class ring, restored and sized for her finger. "We found this among his personal effects," he explained. "He would have wanted you to wear it." Reese slipped the ring onto her finger, feeling the weight of its history. She was no longer the abandoned daughter of a forgotten hero. She was a proud member of 2 families now, the United States Navy and the Brotherhood of Navy SEALs, who had changed her life. The autumn breeze carried the sound of anchors away across the academy grounds as new midshipmen gathered with their families. But around Reese, Montgomery stood a different kind of family. 12 warriors in dress blues, a mother who had found her strength, and the invisible but ever-present spirit of Captain James Montgomery, Medal of Honor recipient, whose sacrifice had finally received its full measure of recognition and respect. Torres looked at the young woman who had transformed from a bullied scholarship student to a proud Naval Academy midshipman. "Your journey starts here, Reese," he said, "but remember, you'll never walk it alone." The medal on her chest caught the sunlight once more, a bright reminder that heroes live on through those they leave behind, and that sometimes the greatest legacy a warrior can leave is not the battles they fought, but the daughter they prepared to carry on their fight. Thanks for spending a moment here with me. If this story touched you, let's keep this connection going. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.